Hello, everyone. Dr. Vicky here speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center. So we're going to be looking at the astrology of the second week of June. That is June 10th through the 17th, I believe. And June so far has been quite an interesting month, as all the months in 2024 seem to be. Of course, the first week of June, there was a lot of Gemini energy. Part of that Gemini energy was due to the new moon in Gemini. We also had Venus conjunct the sun in Gemini, and we also had Mercury conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. So there was a lot of um, intense initiatory energy of Gemini. At the end of the week, Venus made a first quarter square to the sun in Gemini. And so that first quarter square is always a crisis in action. And what's going to happen in the second week of June, or the second week we're looking at here, is that the other personal planets are going to be making squares to Saturn, as well as Pluto and Mars making a square. So that's a lot of square energy, and squares denote crisis. And the crisis that these squares denote are crisis in action. And so we're going to feel compelled and impelled to take action on many different things, most of which come from when we're dealing with the Saturn squares to planets that are in Gemini, deal with the conjunctions that occurred with Saturn and those personal planets, which happened, I believe, mostly at the end of February and maybe the beginning of March. And so things that happened at the end of February, beginning of March, are now coming to a crisis point. But we'll take a look at each and every one of them as we go through the charts. So I just want to welcome you all. I know I say stuff and then I welcome you. So know that right from the very beginning, I'm welcoming you. There are some of you who are new subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. If you can give this video a thumbs up, that's very helpful. This particular video that I do, I try to do every week, unless I have a period when I get to do 2 weeks. I do try to keep them brief, but sometimes there's so much happening that that's nearly impossible. And of course, with everything in Gemini, chances are I'll use a lot of words, so that takes time. But thank you for joining us. And for my tried and true, have been with me for years. Of course, you know, I love you guys. I do this service by sharing what I understand about the stars, and hopefully it can help you navigate as well. It certainly helps me. I have done a number of videos. I did a new moon video, Moon Shadows, New Moon in Gemini with Ona from Ona's Tarot. That is on my channel. Every month we do the new moon on my channel, and we do the full moon on Ona's channel, so that her channel is Ona's Tarot. And in 2 weeks, we will have a full moon video coming up for you, the moon, full moon in Capricorn. So that's interesting. And I also, because the new moon fell on the 6/6 portal, I've also done a portal video, and now I'm doing this video. So hopefully you're not tired of watching me do videos. And there are some things that I will repeat in this video, probably that I repeated in those. So just fair warning, right? Okay, let's dive right in and see what the charts have to say. Okay, everyone. So we're looking at the week ahead from June 9th to June 15th. Excuse me, I had the wrong dates. And we start, of course, with Sunday, the 9th. We get right off on Sunday. And what's happening on Sunday is the first thing that happens on Sunday is Mars ingresses into Taurus. Now, Mars has been in Aries. Mars spends about 6 weeks in a sign. And Mars ingress through Aries was particularly exciting. We'll use that word. Mainly, well, for many reasons. Number one, the north node of the moon is in Aries. And so When the north node of the moon, the direction of our destiny, is in Aries, it's asking us to perhaps go to places we haven't gone to before. Aries is about initiating something new. Aries is also about the I am energy. And so we had this Mars energy empowering the energy of the I am. But it can be scary because the North Node is the place we haven't been before. And so there's always a little bit of trepidation, sort of stepping forward. Along with Mars and the North Node in Aries, we also had Mars conjunct Eris, which is the goddess of discord. We had Mars conjunct the North Node. We had Mars conjunct Chiron, which is in Aries, and the United States at this time is having its fifth Chiron return all year. We already had one hit of exact Chiron return, and we're going to have two more, one more this year and one at the beginning of next year in February. So we are in this country, in the United States where I live, we are coming to terms with both our wounds and how we have wounded others and how our continued actions continue to wound, and perhaps now is the time to heal that. So that's sort of like the background of the Mars energy, and now it moves into Taurus. Now, of course, Mars in Aries is a cardinal fire sign, so things are fiery and hot and often angry. And now it moves into Taurus, and things sort of calm down and slow down with Mars in Taurus. Taurus really is an energy of our essential needs. What do we absolutely need for our survival and our thrival, ultimately, our thrival? So what's going to happen as Mars moves into that Taurus energy? It may feel a little bit, for some people, it may be like, whew, right? The fire, that sort of like whoosh of fire is calming down a bit into this earthly sign. For those who want to continue that sort of fiery path, when the Mars moves into Taurus, it's like it hits, like it's like, and now forward motion is much more measured forward motion, and people can get a lot more stubborn with this. So there can be more obstructionism with this, but it can also be that we're all sort of slowing down a little bit with that Mars in charge with, with Taurus in charge of the North Node, Mars and Taurus in charge of the North Node. And the other thing about that is that when Mars moves into Taurus, and Mars is the ruler of the North Node, Venus, the ruling planet of Taurus, does get some influence in this. And so before it was like Mars, Mars, Mars. Now it's Mars, Venus. Right? So things are a little bit more perhaps balanced in that energy. And Venus right now is in the sign of Gemini and will eventually move into Cancer. She'll do that next week. Next week we have this big shift from the Gemini energy into the Cancer energy. So things shift yet again. But it means that Venus in her way is ruling the South Node, because the South Node, what we're being asked to let go of, renegotiate, talents and abilities. That South Node holds talents and abilities that we do have, but it is, and we can utilize those talents and abilities to move forward in our life through the North Node. But also that South Node, we can get stuck. And because it's in a Venus ruled sign, and Venus is ruling that South Node, now she's ruling the South Node and has influence on the North Node, because Mars is now in a sign that she rules. So in that respect, I feel that this slowing down, perhaps women's issues will become more prominent. Women will become more prominent. Things will slow down, and we'll start to look at things from a more practical standpoint. And we also have on Sunday, as Mars moves into Taurus, sort of slowing things down, the sun makes its first quarter square to Saturn. This can bring up issues of self-worth. They come to the forefront, And it brings up hidden insecurities and fears. So if you tend to be a fearful person or an insecure person, you might feel a little bit more like that. If you're not an insecure and fearful person, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm not usually like this is the reason. What the sun and Saturn is asking us to do is to take actions to build firm foundations so that we can work on the new structures that need to be built as we move through this cycle. On Tuesday, the 11th of June, Mars makes a first quarter square to Pluto. This is a crisis in action square. Now, the Mars Pluto square is can be very there's first of all, it's a crisis. People want to take action. Pluto is our unconscious desires. Mars is makes our unconscious desires conscious, and there's always a sense of fighting for your life with this energy. And so people who feel like they're in danger of losing their life, their livelihood, their position, their power are going to be very aggressive. And Mars Pluto can be quite awful and terrible kind of energy, used in inappropriate ways. Used in higher vibrational ways, it's a very powerful mover of evolution. But we will evolve through the challenges and through the glories, right? Unfortunately, there are still those who are not quite ready to let go of the ghost of revenge and an eye for an eye. So we are going to have to watch that this week. I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe this is the week that Netanyahu comes to speak to the House, invited by the Republicans. I believe that is to be true, and that's sort of the energy. Okay, so that's Tuesday. On Wednesday, Mercury, the planet of communication, makes its first quarter square to Saturn. All the planets that moved into Gemini now are making these first quarter squares to Saturn because Saturn is in Pisces. Gemini and Pisces are both mutable signs, and so this is the natural point of this square. There can be a sense of being held back. That's Saturn. Saturn does that, and a tendency towards pessimism. So that's something else. So there's a lot of really difficult, can be violent, but can be also pessimistic energies in this week. And it's not something that you necessarily want to take in. Okay, you don't want to. You I would say the best way to face this week is to see what you need to do in your life to move yourself forward. That's what everybody's doing, but we do need to attend to our own house here. And so let's attend to our house. And as we attend to our house, those people who are doing the things that everybody's watching and seeing and go, ooh, what's happening? They'll do what they have to do. And hopefully the energy of us doing our best for ourselves and being our best people will help to move the energy into a little less of a challenging, difficult week, I think. On Friday, we have Mercury making a superior conjunction to Gemini at 25 degrees of Gemini. This is interesting because last week, Venus was in the heart of the sun, and this week, Mercury is in the heart of the sun. So it's a Mercury Cassimi. Now, as we look at the tree of life here, we can see that this is the vibration of the month. Of the year here, 2024, remembering that this is the path of strength. As you sow, so shall you reap. This path here is the vibration of the sixth. We're in the 6th month. This is the Gemini path. And of course, there's so much Gemini. And look to see how much Gemini is here, right? Now, last week we had Gemini here, and here because we had the new moon. This week we have a first quarter moon with the moon in Virgo. So even the sun and the moon are in these sort of first quarter square crisis in action energies. So there is a lot of action there, but a lot can get done. This energy, we're driven to do something. And so do what's best for you and your situation to bring stability into your life so that you can further build on that stability. So I just wrote a little note over here on the right that I'll read. I think I already said this. This is this week the personal planets in Gemini, save for Venus, which made her first quarter square in the 8th, make their first quarter square to Saturn, creating a crisis in action on the seeds planted at the conjunctions and the start of their synodic cycles with Saturn. Saturn is about building structures. Saturn is the tester. Okay. Saturn is the Lord of karma. And so, and Saturn is in Pisces. We could also see a lot of weather this week with this energy and quite a bit of flooding, which I know is already happening in places like Brazil. I know California had flooding. Texas had flooding. That flooding energy is probably not going to go anywhere. We do have Neptune in the last degree of Pisces, powerful. And we have Saturn in Pisces. So a lot of our trails and travails come through the element of water, which could be actual water, or it could be our feelings and our emotions. Okay, let's continue. We'll go through each of these. I don't think there's too many charts, but then I always think there's not too many charts, and then there's a whole bunch of charts. All right, so let's look at this first quarter square to Saturn, crisis in action. Issues of self-worth come to the forefront, grappling with hitting insecurities and fears. I already said that. Are you feeling picked on? Because you can feel picked on with this energy. And we know a certain someone, a Gemini, who's feeling picked on. Actually, there are a number of Geminis being picked on. One of them is, of course, the former president, the 45, his attorney, quote unquote, Rudy Colludi. That's what Michael Cohen calls him, Rudy Colludi. He's a Gemini. And Jack Smith is a Gemini as well. And I know that there's some things going to be going on with Jack Smith and Aileen Cannon, that whole thing down in Florida. So we will hear a lot about Gemini. We also have the Hunter Biden thing this week, but this coming week, right? Yeah. But he's not a Gemini, he's an Aquarius. I'm not sure if he has things in Gemini or not. I can't quite remember. But Gemini is connected with young people. And while Hunter isn't young, he is the son of the president, so he's younger than the president, so we can sort of make a connection there as well. And Joe Biden has Uranus in Gemini and Saturn in Gemini. So he's feeling things from, of course, the incredible amount of pressure he's under as the president of this United States at a time when the United States is really sort of tearing each other apart. The world is tearing itself apart. He's trying to support the Ukraine. He's trying to hold back Netanyahu, and then the Republicans are. It's just a lot of pressure on that man. So we will send grace out to everybody, even the bad guys, hopefully, so that they can see the light and move in a different direction. All right, so this is part of the Sun Saturn synod that actually began on February 28th of this year, 2024, and it occurred at 10 degrees of Pisces. So that was the seed that was planted, and now we have come to this crisis point. And so we look to the theme of the 10 degrees of Pisces through the Sabian symbols. It says, an aviator on his journey flying through ground obscuring clouds. The highest level of achievement, only the few manage to go beyond levels of normal excellence to master their chosen craft and skill set. Attain the highest level of responsibility you can manage. And so that was the seed of the Sun and Saturn. And now when we come to this crisis point, we have to keep in mind that we really do need to be our best selves, to give it our all, to take our responsibilities seriously. And what is responsibility but our ability to respond to a situation? Not react, but respond. Now the sun is at 20 degrees of Gemini. The Sabian symbol for that is a cafeteria. Um, Danger of superabundance. If we take more than we can digest, then the wastage that occurs, or the waste that occurs, is a potential problem. The supreme importance of applying reasonable limits to our desire nature. And we can actually see that with what's going on with the ex-president. Reasonable limits to our desire nature. He has had no limits to his desire nature until last week, when we had when the 34 indictments came down, right? There was another line in the sand. E. Jean Carroll put a line in the sand. Letitia James put a line in the sand. And now Alvin Bragg put a line in the sand. And of course, whenever he gets a line, he blows up, right? And all his minions blow up too. So we can sort of, and this isn't really a political reading per se, but we can see the energy of the stars being expressed. And of course, he's a Gemini, so all of this is happening. Oh, well, the Gemini part of this is happening in the most public part of his chart. Now, this energy, this Gemini symbol, is square. So in a crisis with 20 degrees of Pisces, the Sabian symbol for that is a table set for an evening meal, affirmation of a bounteous harvest, or bountiful harvest, excuse me. At the end of our endeavors, we are nourished by whatever we can harvest from our labors and our experiences, living with an attitude of gratitude. And so sometimes we don't get our needs met. Sometimes we don't get everything we want. And yet we must live in that attitude of gratitude, because without gratitude, you will never get any more. Sometimes all you can be grateful for is that you woke up, that you're breathing, and that your feet hit the ground. But that gives you another opportunity to make things better. And we have to keep that in mind. So here is the chart. This is actually a chart for the United States. My thank you for those who do not live in the United States to see these charts with the US, all this US stuff. It's hard not to do it with the US chart because there's just so much going on here. This is where I live, so it is important. We have Saturn in the 10th house, likes being in the 10th house, mind you, and the sun being in the 12th house, which is the house of hidden enemies. And so we have to be aware that we're not always seeing what's going on. We can feel the energy, but we may not see what's going on because the sun is in the 12th house in this chart. So be aware that it's happening, but you might not be able to see it clearly yet. But eventually you'll know what's going on. On the 9th, we have a Mars ingressing into Taurus. So the Sabian symbol for 1 degree of Taurus is a clear mountain spring, authentic self-expression. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Pure innocence, spontaneity as a way of life, spontaneous authenticity. That's the energy degree of Taurus where Mars is in. But I always love where the ruler of Taurus is. Whenever Mars moves into a sign, it activates that sign and activates the ruler of that sign. Well, we have Venus, the ruler of Taurus, at 21 degrees of Gemini, for demonstration, outburst. It is healthier to release pent-up emotions rather than to continue repressing them, allowing an outburst of pent-up feelings. So we can see from this, just from Mars moving into Taurus and Venus as the ruler of Taurus being the symbol, we can see that there's going to be more of this energy of sort of, right? So be prepared for that. Now Mars is in Taurus. Now Mars in Taurus is the ruler of the North Node, which is currently at 14 degrees of Aries. So I wanted to see where the North Node was as Mars moved into Taurus. And it is a serpent coiled near a man and a woman, making relationships sacred, turning in tuning into the rhythms of natural energy instead of being enslaved by passion and need. So we can see that there is a balance between this need to express ourselves, a need to express our feelings, and yet it's not just about that. We need to have a balance, right? Now, I just want to point out that June of 2024 is a 14-5 vibration, which is the temperance card, right? So that is the one thing we need to keep. This whole month of June is a temperance month. And so while we will have feelings and things will happen and things will get crazy because that's the nature of it, we have to always put just one foot in front of the other, keeping our eye on the prize. And when we're dealing with the temperance energy, the eye is our own heart. Let your heart lead the way, right? Your heart, not your lower passions, not your fear. There's a choice between fear and love. Choose love. Choose love. On the 11th, Mars squares Pluto. This can be dangerous. We have and when you see the Sabian symbols for these, we have a crisis in action. With the energy unleashed by this square between Mars and Pluto, your primary drive often stems from self-centered impulses and a need to discharge the abundant martial energy within you. So we can see there's going to be a lot of expression. Now, the seed of this initial this is a crisis in action point within the cycle between us and Pluto, and that seed was planted on February 14th. There was a conjunction, and that was at the first degree of Aquarius, which is about lasting values, and an ancient, an old Adobe mission in California. It's about what we build that goes beyond our lifetime. What we build that is secure and steady and can be a touchstone for future generations. That's the energy we're being asked to. That was seeded on Valentine's Day, actually, and now we're in a crisis point. So let's look at that. We have Mars at 2 degrees of Taurus, an electrical storm, an epiphany of light, the powerful cosmic element of existence that can transform human consciousness. And squaring crisis in action square to 2 degrees of Aquarius, an unexpected thunderstorm. So we have an electrical storm and a thunderstorm squaring each other. Pluto and Mars, our desires, right? Our soul's evolution, Pluto and Mars, okay? The collective soul of the earth. What are the chances we're going to have some storms this week? Pretty good. If you hear that a storm is coming, make sure you have all your supplies. All life is ephemeral. Even though we want to cement our lives into secure structures, nature always wins in the end. Submission to unforeseen and uncontrollable forces. Okay. And we can see here in this chart, we have Pluto in the 6th house for the US. The 6th house is the house of health. It's also the house of the military. And we have Mars in the 10th house. 10th house being the house of the leader, the president, right? And so this could be some sort of military action, And hopefully it doesn't drag us into something that we can't get out of yet again. June 12th, Mercury squares Saturn. Again, we have all these Gemini planets making those first quarter squares. And again, we have Saturn in the 10th house, but Mercury is in the 12th. So there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. Remember that, behind the scenes. We have Gemini. We have, let's see. This aspect can lean towards pessimism. Structure your thoughts as an organizing principle while avoiding self-criticism. This particular cycle began at the Mercury-Saturn conjunction, also on February 28th at 10 degrees of Pisces. An aviator flying through ground obscuring clouds, same symbology. It happened on the same day. Now Mercury is at 20, the dangers of superabundance, squaring Saturn at 20, a table set for an evening meal, affirmation of a bounteous artist, living with an attitude of gratitude, being grateful for what you have, and stop complaining about what you don't have. Okay? Gratitude goes a long way this week. Sunday, the 14th, we have the superior conjunction of the sun to Mercury. It's at 25 degrees of Gemini, a man trimming palms, the containment of wildness. Wholesome limits must be applied to our urge to expand the scope of our knowledge and experiencing, tidying up expressions of personality. Okay, so this is an energy. Now, this actually occurs up in the 10th house for the US. Actually, no, it doesn't. Does it? No, hold on a second. I think I have the wrong thing here. Oh, no, yeah, that's it. At 25 degrees of Gemini. Sorry about that. I was like, got confused for a minute. And of course, this conjunction is square Saturn, right? And this is when Mercury is in the heart of the sun. Mercury is in the heart of the sun. Mercury is actually on the opposite side of the sun to the Earth. And so it's almost like an opposition. We can't really have an opposition between the sun and Mercury because they're so close. But from the perspective of the Earth, this is actually when Mercury is farthest away from us because it's on the other side of the sun. And so this is a time when we can get some perspective that we otherwise would not have. If Mercury was retrograde at this period, at this time, which it's not, but if it was, then Mercury would be between the sun and the earth. And of course, when Mercury is closer to the earth, that's when things get really loud. So we need to sort of look within and sort of close out the noise from outside. But with this particular conjunction, paying attention to what's being said and what's happening can actually be fruitful as long as you don't get overwhelmed by it, which with all this Gemini energy is easy enough. All right, well, that's the story, Morning Glories. I don't want to keep you much longer than that because I've done a lot of videos for you, and I guess there is a point of no return on these things. So I hope you find this helpful for the week ahead. It is going to be a challenging week. I will put these up with timestamps for the actual aspects. So if you want to go back to a specific aspect that I spoke of, there'll be a timestamp for that. It'll be easy for you to go back and say, oh, what's going on the 11th or what's going on, right? So I'll do that for you. All right, guys, have yourself a great day. And give me the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. If you'd like a reading with me, I do have availability. I am going to be on Susan Lynn's channel again, and next week, the 17th, I think. That's when we're meeting. I don't know when she's going to put it up. So I'll be back on Susan Lynn's, and usually after that I get kind of busy. So if you want to make appointments to get a reading with me, this is you could put it out as far as you want. You don't have to have the reading this week, you know what I'm saying? But there are appointments available, and usually after I spend time with Susan, things fill up. So if you want to be first in line, get ahead of things. And I am going to be doing a new introduction to the Kabbalah, and I am toying with the idea of doing that on the solstice. So I will make an announcement on that if you're interested in learning how I work. If you're interested in learning about the Kabbalah, that's the first class. The second class is a little bit more on how I work with the Kabbalah and the system that I use. So if you find that interesting, if you've had a reading with me and you want to delve deeper into that, you will have your opportunity. All right, guys, have a wonderful week, and I'll see you again next week. Things are going to get a little bit better, I think, next week. Well, different. Cancer. All right. Take care, everyone. Namaste.